Welcome to Reads and Threads. My name is Kate. Hello if you're new here. Welcome back if you're joining us again. Today we're going to be running through a video that I started making months and months ago. I even had an intro film for it, which I have scrapped because it was so long ago that it wasn't the best. What we're going to do today is do some of the threads section of Reads and Threads. I am in the middle of multiple cross stitch projects. I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use on the regular when I'm doing cross stitch. I will show you the projects that I am currently working on, and we will do a little bit of stitching together. So I have filmed me doing some stitching, and I'll pop on some music and you can kind of do a little bit with me if you want, and then at the end you'll have seen some progress on my stitching, and hopefully you'll be able to get some tips and tricks that you didn't know about going in. But also I would love if you could share any tips and tricks that you have with me. I'm always willing to learn more things about any of the projects that I'm in the middle of. I would not claim to be an expert in anything. I just love doing what I am doing. I have a group that gets together with my friends that we call Stitch and Bitch. So I do get to do a little bit of stitching there. Lately, that's been the only time that I have been stitching, except for when I was filming for this video. Hopefully you are willing to sit around and stitch with me for a little while and enjoy. Cross stitch that I bought off Etsy a fair few years ago now. This is a mixture of full cross stitch and then half cross stitch. So I'm still only really in the first little section. Now at the moment I have this, it is a printed Aida. I don't know if that's really showing up overly well on camera, but it's like this kind of mocha. You can kind of vaguely see it. You can see it's fairly bright white on one side, and then on the other side it's kind of a pattern mocha. It's not a huge color. I didn't want it to detract from the image. At the moment I'm using a Q-snap frame to hold all this in. So it has these connectors, and you can get these in all different sizes. This is what they look like when they aren't together. They come with long clippers and then more connectors, so that I can make this bigger or smaller depending on what size piece of material I have. And then these slot on the outside for when you're sliding your material on and off, just to clamp it and keep it nice and tight. You want a fairly taut piece of material to keep your stitches the same. I also have this piece of material I made over the top. Now this was my first attempt at making one of these. The stitching is in white. It was just a practice one. So it's like a little scrunchie for my holder. And then it just keeps a lot of the grime and dust and that kind of stuff off of the material while I'm stitching, because I've got to hold it in my hand, or even if I've got it clamped onto a holder, it'll get more grubby. I have only made one of these so far. I do have a heap of material, so I am hoping at some point to get some more made up, but this was just my first attempt, and I actually did that a couple of years ago now, and was really happy how it turned out, and constantly just using this same one. At some point I do need to stitch more of those. The other thing that I found that has been a game changer is this little thing up in the corner here. Now this is called a needle holder. It's magnetic, so I know that if I chuck my needle on there, it's not going to go anywhere. And then it just has a little press stud magnet on the back. And it has just been a game changer. I remember the first time I saw these, it was our first year doing Stitch and Bitch, and I bought one for all my friends to have for Christmas that year, and since then I have just bought heaps more. So on my big cross stitch I have this cute little mermaid tail one, and then on an old magnet board over here I have this cute little sheep one as well. I just interchange which one I'm using depending on the pattern I'm doing and which one I feel like using. On our 1 year anniversary of Stitch and Bitch, my friend Kate made us all these cute little pencil cases with our Stitch and Bitch when we established the group, and this has just been really handy. I pop all of the stuff that I'm going to use, so I've got extra needles in there and I have some other things that I pop in there, and it's just a good way to carry around all my little bits and bobs that I need. Last year, I think it was for Christmas, one of my other friends, Michelle, made us these cool bags that she did on her Cricut. We each got to pick a bag that we liked the best, and so I went with this Let's Craft one with a cute multicolored cat. And so all of my cross stitch stuff I just take and keep in here. So I do still have a physical version of the pattern that I'm working on. I do just like to keep this so that I have something to refer to that's just physical and easier to find. That's what I carry and keep all my cross stitch stuff stored in. One of my friends at my old craft group made these. So this one's a little scissor holder, and it's just so well designed. It's perfect for my little embroidery scissors. It clips on with a press stud, and in there I can keep my little embroidery scissors and my awesome needle threader. This is from Clover. It is the best needle threader I have ever had. I have now had this for a good 4 years without it breaking. I got this from a little shop on Fullerton Road in Adelaide in South Australia. I know my friend did buy one on Amazon. This cost me about $13, but it has been well worth it. You can just get some cheap ones from like Spotlight or online, but they just break or go the wrong shape within 5 seconds. This has been so good. I never used to worry about a needle threader because I thought, no, my eyes can do it, I'm fine. But oh my God, it's a game changer, and now I don't ever not use one. I also have this little needle holder, which I absolutely love. Same friend that made this. She didn't have the matching material, which was fine. I was okay with that. I quite like this one. It just folds out into like a little clover shape, and then I've just written my 8 count a needle size along the top, and then I just keep some extra needles with me in here in case I run out. The other thing she made, I do have 2 of these. One matches my scissor holder. This one just here, it's a little triangle pouch. And then the other one I have, which I got first, is this purple. Purple is my favorite color, so I did really like these. And so in these, I just keep all my loose little cutout pieces of thread. So it's like a little mini bin, but that's material. And then I just chuck those out when I don't need them anymore. And when you haven't used them, they can just fold up into this cute little triangle. So all this stuff I take with me in my little pencil case holder. And then I always have access to everything that I could possibly need while I'm stitching with me on the go. I have started putting all my patterns onto my iPad in the last few years. I've just found it a whole lot easier. The one problem I do have, now this needs to charge because I've got to leave in about an hour. I heard a lot of people online using a program called Pattern Keeper, which, because I wanted to use my iPad, I couldn't use that. At the moment, I'm not sure if it still is, but when I was looking into it, it was only available on Android. Now, I don't have any Android devices, so that wasn't going to be an option. I looked around for an option that I could use with my iPad, and it came out with this one just here, which I know you can't read what it's called, but it's Markup RX, I'm pretty sure it's called. And so what I can do is I can load up all PDF patterns. So I have a heap in here. Some of these I'm not in the middle of working on, but I have bought them off of Etsy and just loaded them in here so that I don't lose them. Wildflowers one, I'm just doing that on here. And then I have my Hufflepuff up in the top here, which I have completed predominantly, except for some back stitching, which I'm not entirely sure I even want to put in it. The one I'm in the middle of is Gryffindor, so I can just click on it. It will open up to the last page I was working on and have the last symbol that I selected highlighted. Up the top here, it'll tell me the symbol that is highlighted, how many stitches are left of that color, and then what color DMC thread that it is looking for me to use. I still do tend to double check that with my physical pattern, but mostly it's pretty accurate. I can tap in there and it will bring up a list of all the symbols that it's looking for each color, and then how many throughout the whole thing it has. I can also change between symbols. If I want to pick a new symbol, I can say, let's do this little flower, and it'll change at the top and tell me how many of that color there is and then what color I need to get to use it. It's really handy when I've completed a stitch. I can use this little markup option and just highlight what I've stitched and unhighlight if I accidentally make a mistake. At the moment, I'm halfway through that color. Now, some of those will be half stitch or full stitch. So depending on what they are, I'll need to change sometimes the number of threads that I'm doing, or just how I start stitching will change depending on if it's a half stitch or a full stitch for me most of the time. But yeah, I just thought I'd show you that. It's a really good program. I did have to pay for this. It was a one-off payment and it has been worth it, I think. I've really enjoyed just stitching off my iPad and knowing I don't have to worry necessarily about taking my paper pattern with me. I could just take this and be fine and be able to continue on. The other thing that's really important when I'm cross stitching, especially at night, is good light. Most of the time I'm alright just doing it with natural light, but a few years ago for my birthday, I think, my family got me this lamp. This lamp is very handy. One, I can bend and move this around to whatever angle I feel like having it on, but also it comes with a handy dandy remote. Now this allows me to increase the brightness. So when I turn it on, I can make it a cool white, a warm white. I can adjust the brightness up and down, change it around, change the color, make it brighter or lighter, and it's just really handy. It just has been a game changer. It's just allowed me to stitch at night while I'm watching TV and not have to worry about straining my eyes and having that be an issue. I thought while I was in a bit of a cross-stitching mood, I've just had my cross-stitch group, we would do a little bit together. I have my pattern up on my iPad. So this is just in markup, and then I can zoom in and out depending on which bit I want to go to and select each color thread. At the moment I'm stitching this kind of upside down V, and that is the DMC color 3022, which is kind of this grey green color. So I don't have a huge amount of stitches left in this bit, so I've got about 14 left and they're just going to run up the middle here. Thought we would do that together, and then I'll run through a bit of how I like to do my threads, how I like to do my stitching and that kind of stuff. So I will tend to, I know where I'm starting, go up the top left, down the bottom right, and then I'll flip my material over. And then as I'm about to go in the top left, I will hook my needle over the thread that I'm working on, and then when I pull it through, we'll create a loop where that one is in over the top of it, and then I can pull that until it's just gonna come out of the material that it's hooked around. And then as you pull that tight, it really catches the thread so that it doesn't go anywhere. And then I just find that that's a really good starter for me. I do know another way to start as well, which I can definitely show you at some point, which I find a lot easier when I'm doing a single square sometimes over a long run. This is all 18 count AIDA. It is fairly small and it's such a wide project that I am struggling a bit. I do definitely need to get a better stand. I'm not one of those people that can do two-handed stitching. It would be awesome if I could. I don't generally jump very far either. I've just stitched this stitch here. My next ones are a fair way over. A lot of the time, depending on the jump, I won't go super far over, but because we're only really starting out with this and there's going to be a lot of colors going over the top of it, I am fine with it for the most part. From the point of view that any thread on the back will get covered up and it won't look really manky at the back. I like my back to be fairly neat when I turn it around, just personal preference. The first cross stitch that I did when I was getting back into it definitely was not neat. I also prefer to do a full stitch as well. I find that if I don't know how much thread it's going to take up, and I can't stand that. I wouldn't want to have a situation where I was coming back along. A lot of people will do like a one side of the cross and then come back the other way. And I think I would get very frustrated very quickly with not knowing how much thread that was going to take up. I couldn't deal with that. I need to do a little bit of counting now. We need to go 8 across from our last stitch and 1 up. So I do tend to kind of move my needle when I'm counting to make sure that I am getting into the correct place, and then looking at how that lines up with the other stitches that I've previously done. You also want to make sure you've got a decent amount of tail left on your needle, just so that the thread won't remove itself. This time I'm going to go 4 up and 1 over, and then we've got 2 stitches here, 1 apart from each other. Now we're going to be doing a fairly big jump, which again I wouldn't normally do, but in this case I will, just because I know that I'm going to cover up the tail end of it. But we're going to go 12 up and 3 over from that one. So in there. And this time we're going to stay in that same line, but go 4 over to the left, and then do 1 here and 1 directly above it. I think now we're going to go 11 up. Which should bring us in line, which I will just double check. Yep, so it's the same line as this one just over here. And that should be, I think, if I haven't marked them off, the last stitch of this colour in this square. Now, when I am finishing off a stitch, I will hook it back through the previous stitches. Generally, I prefer a lot more amount to hook into wherever I can. Is great, and then I just cut it fairly, I'm magnetizing, cut it fairly close. I have now marked off on here the ones that we were actually doing, so they are all colored in, and you can see at the top here I have one left in that color in this little square. This square on this pattern is nearly like half an A4 size sheets. There are 48 squares in this all the way along, and it literally is just this tiny little square here in my material. And I think you can get the concept of just how big this one is going to be from that. But I'm glad I have made a little bit of progress in this, and I think next we'll just do some stitching together. So stick around, do some stitching with me, and I'll catch you at the end and we can check out our progress. We're now going to change to this little symbol here, which is DMC thread 3052, and you can see that in this square there are 200 of that one to do. So it highlights them all, which is really handy, and now I can go around and fill it in on the pattern. I have all my threads on my Annie's Keepers, and 3052 is this one just here, which is this lovely shade of green. I'm actually really liking that shade of green. In this pattern we are stitching with 2 strands. I'll take 2 off of here and then we'll put the extra ones back on the Annie's Keepers. I find the easiest way to get my threads out is to kind of hold it at the top, and then find one thread, and while you're holding, just pull, and it will just come easily out. It very rarely will actually knot when you do that. And then just grab another one and pull that one out, and now we've got two. I showed this earlier, but one of the best tools I have bought is this Clover needle threader. So it just slips through the eye of the needle. Once you got your two threads lined up, you pop it through the little top hole it's created, pull it through a bit, and then just move your thread through, and it gives you a perfectly threaded needle without having to lick the material or anything like that. hopefully you can see from the pattern which pieces we just got done. We have 136 stitches left in that color, and we managed to stitch the colored in yellow squares just then. So we went all the way up here, and then I was starting to meet this section on this side. So I think now what I'll do is I'll close that off possibly and come back down here and work my way back up. But then when I get up to there, I can go up again. And then I'll do the same again and work my way up from this side. But pretty happy with that. So that I'm going to save my progress on markup. So the next time I come in, it will be good to go. I think we're going to leave this one here for now. Hopefully you got some stitching done, or even if you were just listening to the music at the end, a bit of relaxation time for yourself. If you'd like to see more of this, please do think about hitting the like button and also subscribing. I'd love to have you on board. I have also linked down below my Goodreads, my Storygraph, and my Instagram if you'd like to come and follow me over on any of those. I have started to include updates for my cross stitching in my monthly wrap-ups, so look forward to seeing those in the future. Hopefully you're interested. If not, you can just skip it because it will be time-stamped down below on any of the videos that I do end up doing. I would love to be able to see your projects. I'm not entirely sure how I would go about doing that. Whether there's something in the community page or anything like that that I have to turn on, I'm not sure, but if you know, let me know. And I hope that wherever you are, you're having a really wonderful day and getting some of your own projects done as well. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Bye.